Good evening. I am delighted that you are here to join the Associates of the Boston Public Library for our 6th annual Pierce Performance Series, 150 Years of Koussevitzky. This wonderful video that you just saw was created by the BSO to recognize the 150th anniversary of Serge Koussevitzky's birth and the 100th anniversary of his arrival in Boston and his appointment as the BSO's music director. I am Louisa Bissett, the Executive Director of the Associates of the Boston Public Library. For those of you who don't know, the Associates is an independent nonprofit dedicated to preserving and promoting the historic, literary, and artistic treasures of the Boston Public Library through targeted grant-making and cultural events such as this one tonight. To date, the Associates funds 10 full-time BPL staff positions in special collections, including the Curator of Music, who you will hear from tonight, and the lead curator for the arts, who is out there somewhere. These talented and skilled professionals are dedicated to caring for the library's treasures and sharing them with the public, free to all. Thanks to the generosity of the Harold Whitworth Pierce Charitable Trust, the Pierce Performance Series seeks to raise the visibility of the Boston Public Library's special collections through free public performances. The Associates is very grateful for members of the Pierce Performance Committee, led by Chair Anita Lincoln. Do you stand, Anita? Each year, the committee works to bring you performances that make the special collections come alive. Thank you. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our wonderful board chair, Alyce Lee.
I did not write those words for her. She's our wonderful executive director. Thank you very much, Louisa. So as she said, I have the great privilege of being the board chair of the Associates of the Boston Public Library. Tonight's program would not be possible without the partnership of Boston Public Library President David Leonard. And David, please do stand. Thank you. Without his support, for sure, and our Director of Research and Special Collections, Beth Prindle, who I don't know if she's in the room, but she just, oh, you are? Oh, she's way up there. So Beth Prindle, and our friends at the Boston Symphony Orchestra. So Serge Koussevitzky was one of the Boston Symphony Orchestra's most influential music directors. He believed that, and this is a quote, music has the power to heal, to comfort, and to inspire. He performed new and lesser-known classical pieces at Symphony Hall. He mentored young talents such as Leonard Bernstein and fostered the creation of new work through commissions and later through grants from the Koussevitzky Music Foundation. For the last 2 years, the BPL's Curator of Music, Jared, you should stand. Thank you. We encourage you to visit the special collections in the lobby to view a beautiful display up there that was created by Jared and his colleagues. Jared joined the BPL in 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic. Previously, he worked in musician libraries around the country, even serving as personal librarian to conductor Michael Tilson Thomas. Jared is joined this evening by the BSO's Blanche and George Jones Director of Archives and Digital Collections. Bridget, please stand. This is Bridget Carr. Yes. Bridget has worked for the BSO for 33 years. And we are so happy that she was able to work with Jared and the others on this evening's event. Tonight, Jared and Bridget will explore how the BPL's collections and the BSO's archives have captured and preserved documents and items that illuminate the breadth of Serge Koussevitzky's career and his lasting impact on the BSO, the city of Boston, and the American musical community.
All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming here and taking an hour out of your evening to learn about the collections that we have dedicated to Serge Koussevitzky. Before I took this job, I knew this collection was here, and being able to work with it has been a dream come true. And it should be one of the pride points of this institution. When I think about all the other special collections we have, like President John Adams Library, this is, to music, the same type of importance. And it's unfortunately been neglected a little bit. So it's been a joy to sort of bring this back to life over the past couple of years. I did want to mention that that video that you saw was actually funded by a grant from the Koussevitzky Music Foundation, now administered by the Library of Congress. And a lot of our BSO colleagues actually worked on it. The program note annotator, Robert Kritzinger, he wrote the script, and it was narrated by the BSO's Director of Content and Digital Services, Graham Wright. What's great about that video is that in 7 minutes, it tells you exactly the highlights of Koussevitzky's life, but all of the photographs and footage are actually drawn from the BSO archival collections. So you actually got to see things from Bridget's collections in that video, which are really amazing, except the newsreel footage. But when Boston Public Library opened its doors in 1854 to the public, there was no place to look at a music collection, to look at a score. It didn't exist. There were libraries in America that had collections, but they were all private or subscription based. So that is a legacy at this institution that I hold dear, because our mission really is to make these materials accessible to the public while collecting towards the future. We've been invested in the Boston Symphony's history since its inception. Quote on your screen, actually, in 1883, we commissioned a local Boston music critic, William Apthorpe, about our collections, like, what is it that people need? And Apthorpe basically says, please contact Mr. George Henschel, which is the first music director of the Boston Symphony Orchestra, and buy all of the scores that the BSO is performing this season. And that is something that we have done ever since. Actually, by the 1920s, this partnership evolves to something where on every subscription program page that the Boston Symphony has for any concert programs, at the bottom of the page you will see the text that says, the works to be played at these concerts may be seen in the Allen A. Brown Music Collection of the Boston Public Library 1 week before the concert. And this is from a program from 1 year before Koussevitzky came to town. So I highlight all of that to tell you that when the collection comes to us in 1966 through the generosity of Koussevitzky's widow, Olga, it was accepted by the Board of Trustees on December 15th, 1966. And the BSO at this point didn't have an archives department. So it kind of made sense for this collection to come to Boston, given Koussevitzky's major contributions to music in our city and for our country. The photo that you see is actually the Olga in the middle holding a score, and I still can't figure out which one it is from the collection. I've tried. The president of the Board of Trustees is on the left, and library president at the time is on the right. So this was a very, very interesting gift that came to the library that we are very grateful for. So what's in it? This collection, unfortunately, has not had an online presence until really the last year. We took this collection and we cataloged a lot of the scores and a lot of the things in the collection with card catalog entries, but it never made its way onto the internet. And part of that is because music is notoriously difficult to catalog, especially with annotations. Not anybody can just, even the most trained cataloger, be able to catalog scores that you find in the Koussevitzky collection. In the last year, we've been really trying to get this out back into the world for this special anniversary. So if I had to give you 3 main sections of the collection that tell us about Koussevitzky, the biggest sections of the collection that I find to be the most interesting are the scores. There are about 2,500 scores from Koussevitzky's personal library. Some of them are annotated in his hand. Some of them are just scores he never looked at. There's manuscript scores, so a score in the hand of a composer, which are really interesting. And they tell the story of Koussevitzky as a musician. What does he like? What doesn't he like? What's easy for him? What's difficult? Through the markings they contain. Scrapbooks relating to Koussevitzky. Every time he walked his dog, almost, it was published in some Boston newspaper, and the music department clipped it into a scrapbook. I'm going to talk to you just quickly tonight about the scores that are in the Koussevitzky collection. So it's primarily orchestral music, and that should not be a surprise to anybody. Many are annotated by Koussevitzky and Koussevitzky's hand, and we'll look at what I mean by that. I find there are many pieces where Koussevitzky and the Boston Symphony gave a world premiere or an American premiere of a piece, so the collection is very well represented in that way. And there's actually scores that function as the only known primary source of a work, meaning that all the existing sources for a particular piece have either been lost or thrown away, and the version in our collection is the closest that you can actually get to the composer's intentions, making this collection really, really integral to our library. So the annotated scores, to briefly walk you through what I mean by this, any musician likes to sort of mark up their scores in a way that will tell you a lot about their interpretive sensibilities about music. Like, for instance, I could say the same sentence 10 different ways, right? But depending on my emphasis, depending on the tone, it could take on a completely different life. And in many cases, that's what these annotations do, actually. And this is in an age before recorded sound was a thing, right? Koussevitzky and the BSO started making recordings during his music directorship, which is great. But there's a lot of performances that weren't recorded. So in some ways, the closest we can get is looking at Koussevitzky's score markings and trying to assess, like, what did it actually sound like in Symphony Hall? I mean, I could trace that through concert reviews and scrapbooks upstairs, but it's a different thing to actually see the musical text and what was changed to make a performance captivating. So this example is actually from Schumann's First Symphony, and Koussevitzky in the beginning here is playing with drama. He's adding all of these markings. It's like very sort of suddenly soft, suddenly loud. I probably wouldn't want to listen to this because it would be very startling, actually, with all of these changes that he makes in blue pencil. These scores contain performance history logs, so you can actually see what performances Koussevitzky conducted using a particular score, which helps us track down why the markings might be in such a way. And I did want to close by saying that these are extremely complex to catalog. You can imagine the different types of annotations that exist, and we needed to be able to do it in a controlled way. And so I am indebted to Robert Cunningham, sitting here in the front, who was the person who didn't need my help, really, to catalog, I believe, 551 scores I think you got through. And we had to create our own controlled vocabulary to actually describe the annotation so that a user can search BPL's catalog in a consistent way and find out what they need. And so, for instance, these are just some of the controlled vocabularies we had to make up to describe these, like changes in orchestration, bowings, tempo indications. And at the bottom, that's actually a note that's in BPL's online catalog of what it looks like, because this note actually describes the page before it, and you could see so many things crossed out and changed in multiple colors. At the end of this year, we've digitized 109 scores that are on Digital Commonwealth, digitized 241 photographs, and Robert cataloged 541 scores. And with that, that's the end of my portion. I will mention that the Library of Congress has most of Koussevitzky's correspondence that we don't, and the Koussevitzky Music Foundation archive. And here's where I'll turn it over to Bridget to tell you about the BSO archives. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jared. And I could listen to you all night. It was really fascinating. I wanted to open my remarks by expressing gratitude to the associates of the BPL and the BPL, and also to Jared Rex. Jared especially has enthusiastically embraced the Koussevitzky anniversaries, and from what I understand, really spearheaded the efforts at the BPL to digitize the first installment of the Koussevitzky score collection. What a wonderful opportunity this has provided for our two institutions to collaborate together. I did want to mention a little bit about the Serge Koussevitzky collection at the Library of Congress. In honor of the 150th anniversary, Library of Congress digitized about 1,000 items from their Koussevitzky collection. They have all of his correspondence and other memorabilia there as well. The BSO is one of a handful of American orchestras that supports an archival program. We are a small but mighty department of 3, and I'm going to have a shout out to my colleagues Sarah Donovan and Jackson Reed. I know Sarah's here. The archive serves as the institutional memory and the keeper of the BSO's legacy. Our mission is to collect, preserve, and make available for future use materials in a variety of formats that document the history of the BSO and its many, many facets, including the BSO, founded in 1881 by Henry Lee Higginson, the Boston Pops, established in 1885, Symphony Hall, owned and operated by the BSO since 1900, which has also served as a venue for a wide range of concerts and community events during the past 124 years. The Pops Esplanade Concerts, founded by Arthur Fiedler in 1929. Tanglewood, the BSO's summer home in the Berkshires since 1937. And the Tanglewood Music Center, which was established by Serge Koussevitzky in 1940. Our archive space boasts a climate-controlled collection storage area, as well as a reading room where we welcome researchers from all over the world, provided they make an appointment first. We reach many more thousands of researchers, however, through our online holdings, which are comprised of Henry. Henry is our performance history database search engine, named after our founder, Henry Lee Higginson, that allows users to search performance details for more than 32,000, at last count, concerts given by the BSO, the Pops, the Tanglewood Music Center, and the Boston Symphony Chamber Players at home and on tour. Search results provide links to PDFs of historical program books and digitized archival audio when available. In fact, the digitization of our program books was done right here in the Boston Public Library in the Internet Archive Digitization Center. The collections.bso.org is a repository for our growing collection of digitized content. And BSO.org, the BSO's website, hosts our online archival exhibits. The bulk of our Koussevitzky-related holdings consists of materials created and maintained by the BSO in the course of doing its daily business, as you might imagine. These include correspondence and contracts, concert programs and printed matter, concert reviews and feature articles, sound recordings, photographs, musical scores, and ephemera. We also actively collect materials from sources outside the BSO, Inc. These include oral history interviews with retired musicians, orchestra members, many of whom played under Koussevitzky, published and unpublished memoirs written by former BSO musicians, including a memoir entitled I Played Fiddle for the Czar, which never was published, but anyway, it's sort of humorous to read through it anyway. In addition, we have received personal scrapbooks, photographs, and memorabilia donated by former Tanglewood Music Center students during the Koussevitzky era. When the BSO purchased Saranac, Koussevitzky's summer estate near Tanglewood, from the Koussevitzky Music Foundation in around 1980, we acquired contents of the home, including oil paintings, sketches, and sculptures created by two of his wives, Natalie, who passed away in 1942, who was a sculptor, and then Olga, who he married in 1947, who was a gifted caricaturist. And even an armoire full of Koussevitzky's shoes and his exquisitely tailored clothes. Many of these items have found their ways into our exhibits. Throughout 2024, the BSO has paid homage to Koussevitzky through concert programming, panel discussions, archival exhibits, and through the creation of online content and resources that will continue to be available long after the end of this anniversary year. The centerpiece of the Koussevitzky tribute took place at Tanglewood this past summer on his birthday weekend. The weekend kicked off on July 26, 2024, Koussevitzky's actual birthday, at Tanglewood's Lindy Center for Music and Learning, with a panel discussion focusing on Koussevitzky's legacy that featured musicologist Harlow Robinson and radio producer and former president of the Koussevitzky Recording Society, Tom Godel, as well as Koussevitzky's biographer, Viktor Yuzovovich, whose Russian-language biographies of Koussevitzky's have yet to be translated and published in English. Harlow and Tom will appear here in the next one of these series of these events on October 29th. Concerts during the celebratory weekend included repertoire composed, championed, commissioned, and premiered by Koussevitzky, including Koussevitzky's bass concerto, which was performed by BSO principal bass Ed Barker. Ed will also be performing here at the RAB Lecture Hall on November 19th as part of this series. Another piece performed this summer was Stravinsky's Symphony of Psalms, a BSO 50th anniversary commission, which received its U.S. premiere on December 30th, conducted by Koussevitzky. Andres Nelsons and the BSO will be reprising their Tanglewood performance from last summer at Symphony Hall in April of 2025. Throughout 2024, the Archives has mounted Koussevitzky-related exhibits both at Tanglewood, shown here, and I must say I'm very, very jealous of Jared's exhibit cases upstairs. They are just beautiful. And at Symphony Hall. Our exhibits in Symphony Hall are located on the orchestra and first balcony levels. We don't have a dedicated museum space. This season, the Koussevitzky content is concentrated in the Cabot Connors room, which is the room with the bars on the first balcony. If you can't make it to Symphony Hall but are interested in the content, expanded versions of all of our exhibits can be found online. For Koussevitzky 150, we created, and I say we, but the person who did so much of this work is Sarah Donovan, who works with me in the archives. We, the Regal We, created a lot of additional digital content, including timelines, mini exhibits, a series of rare radio broadcast performances conducted by Koussevitzky, and 2 video features, including the one we viewed earlier this evening. By searching for Koussevitzky 150 at BSO.org. The work you're going to hear in a few minutes was composed by Paul Hindemith, who was one of the émigré composers that Koussevitzky supported. The BSO and Koussevitzky gave US or world premieres of 4 works by Hindemith, including the world premieres of his concert music for strings and brass in 1931, which was another one of BSO's 50th anniversary commissions, and the world premiere of the Cello Concerto in 1941 with Gregor Pierogorsky as soloist. And there's a picture of Pierogorsky and Koussevitzky and Hindemith on the stage at Tanglewood when they performed it the following summer in 1941. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jared, and so we can listen to the musical selection this evening. Thank you.
Okay, the moment we've all been waiting for, these amazing musicians from the Boston Symphony Orchestra. The one thing that I just had to leave you with, though, is that even though we're celebrating Koussevitzky today, his memory has essentially been neglected in terms of his peer conductors of his lifetime. And everything he started has become a pillar entrenched in the fabric of today's classical music scene in this country, whether or not people know it. And I think without him coming to Boston, classical music in this country would look very different. Our collections also have a lot of Paul Hindemith scores, particularly the sketches for the Cello Concerto. So it's very appropriate that the musicians have chosen to play the Paul Hindemith Septet for winds. So please welcome the musicians from the Boston Symphony Orchestra.
you all for joining us. I learned so much tonight. Thank you to Bridget and Jared, and wow, what a performance. Thank you all. Come back. We are just getting started. On October 29th and November 19th are the 2 additional dates in the Pierce Performance Series. So there's more to learn about our good friend Koussevitzky. Thank you.